everyone, and welcome to a brand new spoiler review episode of Shogun here on the Outlaw Nation channel. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, joined as always, as I've said, by my Hatamoto, by my second, by someone who I've thoroughly enjoyed doing these reviews for. He is the co-host of the Cine-Files with me, but a man who is a big James Clavell historian and has read so much about this Shogun and has been invaluable in these reviews. And Steve Morris, how are you?
I'm very good, and yes, I would agree to be your second if it was necessary, if you had been shamed in some way and you felt it was necessary, although it's a very difficult cut to make, but I would try to do my best.
I think you bet. The first cut is the deepest. Always remember that.
That's true.
But we got so much to get into today. And Steve, I'm starting this review literally just a few minutes after watching the episode. I did a watch-long reaction. If I can get it edited in time, it'll be up on the channel, but I felt that this episode was going to be insane because if you follow the Game of Thrones pattern, which they seem to have followed in this series, it's always that penultimate episode that is the big episode almost every season on Game of Thrones. But in no way did I see coming what was coming in Crimson Sky, this 9th episode of Shogun. And a reminder, this is a spoiler review. So if you clicked on this, stumbled upon this, we are spoiler reviewing this episode. So stop here, go watch it, and come back if you haven't. Or if you don't care, keep on watching. And if you've watched the episode, welcome. Let's have some fun. So, Steve, your thoughts here. This is a Mariko heavy episode. ANNA SAWAI, very much the focus. And clearly, with the mission that Toranaga told her to carry out throughout this entire episode, that led to that, dare I say it, explosive ending that I was absolutely shocked by. So, talk to me about your feelings over this episode. What's your overall thoughts on episode 9 here of Shogun?
So if we take out the part of my brain that knows the book, I thought this was really great.
Yeah.
I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And for many of the things in the book,
yeah,
all the stuff with Mariko, I think it delivers 100%. And then then if we awaken the Kraken in my brain that has the memory of the book, there's some things, and it all goes back to what we've been talking about the whole time of the character of Blackthorne. So but putting that aside, it was great, and I thought they did a beautiful job in dramatizing some, let's say, very dramatic shit. I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I spent the last week watching a bunch of YouTube videos on the real life person that Blackthorne was based on, and his relationship with the Japanese woman that she married. They had 2 kids, the legacy and the history of that lineage. Like I watched all of that stuff. And so for my mind, and I don't think you'd ever alluded to, in my mind, I was like, okay, she's not going to die. This is all just show. And this is all just pushing the boundaries and whatever. And then when she stood in front of the door, I think I yelled at the screen. It was like, don't you fucking do it. And they did it. And I just was left shocked. And it absolutely brought back those feelings from Game of Thrones, like what happens to Ned Stark and what happens to in the Red Wedding and other things. And I admired it and was also angry at it at the same time, which meant that was a very fulfilling experience. And I thought this was the best episode of the series for so many reasons. The writing, the directing here, the way the characters moved around each other, the political intrigue, the commentary within, the polite responses back and forth. So much went on, and the emotional acting going on in the limited amount of time that they were allowed to react to certain things, given the tradition and the expectations of certain people in certain situations. So I thought it absolutely blew me away. So, but we're going to get into it knee deep and have this discussion. So I think we have to start with the Mariko thing, Steve, because it is absolutely the biggest storyline in the episode. So let's go with it. I mean, she arrives here with Blackthorne and Yabushige. She tells Blackthorne, or sorry, she tells Blackthorne not to, that he's doing his own thing. She's got her own mission to go. We do a flashback at the beginning of the episode to 14 years ago. She meets Father Martin for the first time, and she gets the cross that apparently gives her strength. We find out that she's pregnant, that she's ran off 3 separate times. I don't know if I missed this, Steve, but I just had forgotten that she was pregnant, maybe, if we talked about it. So it was all new to me. She ends up in court here. She delivers this really defiant stance here with Ishido and with Lady Ochiba looking on, saying that she has to go back to Toranaga. Ishido defies her. She defies him back. And then this sets a chain of events with her walking out with Toranaga's ladies there, which ends up leading to a big samurai fight. And then her son disavowing her later on, and then her saying she's going to commit seppuku. She starts to commit seppuku, stops, gets the permits. Everyone wants to leave. And then they get attacked by shinobi late at night, which leads to the explosion that seems like took her life in a final moment of defiance to Ishido and allegiance to Toranaga, and maybe even erasing the shame of her name. So your thoughts on how they handled all of this, and we can go beat by beat or step by step, maybe do a Cine-Files approach to this and go beat by beat, but your thoughts overall and specifically on how the storyline from Mariko was handled in this episode and her demise by the end.
Okay, let's go back, because I want to go back to something you said, which is the opening and then her meeting with Alvido and getting the cross.
Yeah.
And her being pregnant, but that's a flashback.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's 14 years ago. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So that was, I was just like, wait, is Mariko pregnant now? Wait, what's happening? Right, exactly. Okay. So yes, I think what's so great about how this all happens is that we've been setting up this character and saying this person is really cool. And you have moments of seeing it, moments where she figures out Toranaga's plan back in the second episode, where as you're watching how she translates, and you can see her reshape some of the things that is said by each side in order to soften things or manipulate things. You see all these things. And then you have the moment where Toranaga first says, hey, your dad died and kept you alive for a purpose.
Yeah.
And then the moment of him saying, are you ready for the purpose? And her saying, I'm ready. And this episode totally delivers on all of that.
Yeah.
So just to as I'll try to go moment by moment, but not too much maybe. So, and again, then this relates to Blackthorne, is the moment at which she says goodbye to him.
Yeah.
It seems as if right in front of her, Yabushige is talking about making a deal with Ishido with Blackthorne.
Yeah.
You know, and these are these areas where it's like going, wait, what's going on? How can you say that right in front of her? That seems very bizarre. Right. But putting that aside, when we get to the scene where first Yabushige and Blackthorne make their little offer, it doesn't go well. Right. And then she comes in, from the moment she walks into that audience hall.
Yeah.
Everything that happens from that point forward completely delivers on, this is an amazing person. This is a hero. This is a person that is up there with anybody else in the whole show in terms of power, in terms of courage, in terms of character, all of that stuff. And she just kills it throughout.
Yeah. So talk to me specifically about how, so the opening scene, we get that, right? Because it's the father who tells her, or the priest there who tells her, God spared me. I've been in your place, and I feel like God spared me for a purpose, and he has now spared you for a purpose. So to have that mirror what Toranaga tells her at the end of episode 8, are you ready to finally fulfill your purpose? We have that beginning episode 9 to maybe hammer that point home. And then we go with her into this situation with Ishido. So what did you think about that whole scene here? We can skip past Yabushige and Blackthorne, because we'll swing back to that later on. But talk to me about her entering. Talk to me about her having this back and forth with Lady Ochiba, and also the back and forth with Ishido, and then being defiant at the standing and being defiant, and then saying, I come from a long line of samurai, you peasant. You won't tell me what I'm going to do, regardless of what my father did. You won't tread on me. You will not embarrass me. You will not use me in this way. So I found that to be an incredibly defined moment. It almost, you had like that watermelon cantaloupe thing. It was like talking behind her. And then she walks out after he says, we will have this conversation. We will have a meeting with the regents or whatever. So what did you think about this entire scene and how it was built out and how it developed and where it led to here by the end of that moment when she walks out?
So first of all, this is very much what's in the book. So including lines of dialogue, like we're right on exactly what the book is. Wow. I love the fact that, it's even to the things of them saying, yes, of course, well, we can have a discussion about that. And it's like, well, I'm glad you could have a discussion on it, but I'm leaving. Like all of that is really right out of the book.
Yeah.
And this is a case where dramatizing it filmically is so much more powerful, because you can see all the reactions going around the room. You can see the way her words kind of bite. And what I think is so fascinating about this is here we have this society that is very much bound by rules and manners and exactly how everybody does. And everybody, Toranaga is coming to Osaka because of rules and manners. And this is and he's going to theoretically come and have to kill himself because that's what the rules say.
Right.
Except that everybody is honoring assumptions. That everybody else will honor those rules in exactly this way. And so we have all these people. Hostage taking is a long-standing tradition in Japan. And it's like, this is how, we make a peace treaty, which is I kind of go, you and I are enemies. And I say, well, John, why don't we have your cousin come stay with me and I'll show him a good time and he'll be over at my place. And you go, oh, that's a great idea. You know what? Why don't you have your nephew come over to my castle and I'll train him to be a great samurai? And we both go, hey, that's great. I'm glad we're such good friends. And then we make this exchange and nobody calls them hostages.
Right.
We just know that I'm not going to attack you because you have my nephew, and you're not going to attack me because I'm holding your cousin, you know? And so that's what's happening here. And what Mariko does is say, well, aren't we free to go?
Yeah.
And now
she speaks the quiet part out loud.
Exactly. Now the rules of the society, you can't say, well, no, obviously you can't go because you're my hostage and I'm keeping you here in order to keep this other person in check. Duh, you can't do that. I'm keeping you prisoner. You can't say that.
Right.
So because you can't say that, they trapped and they don't think that, there's a lot of them that go, oh, Mariko's bluffing. Come on, how they don't realize the determination. And what I love too, she has words that, as you pointed out, throw barbs at Ishido because he was born a peasant. She mentions her father's name, which is the guy that killed Ochiba's father. She does all these things that are very, very specific and pointed. And man, her performance and her strength in this sequence is phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. So blown away by all of it, so blown away by the direction. The fact that they start from behind and then swing around to the side. I think I have a shot of it. Oh, that's the other shot. Here we go. The stuff from the side here as you're watching these different lanes of people watching her as she walks through. Plus, the costuming was really incredible. The design of that entire set as they had this moment, I thought, was so powerful to lay to really hammer home the points and lay the groundwork for what's going to come later through her defiance and the back and forth with her and Lady Ochiba. We can't ignore that, Steve. They hadn't seen each other in years, and we find out later, obviously, in that scene that she says she was sent away, what have you. But they have this really strong back and forth about their past. Ochiba tries to stop her and say, we'll have this conversation in private. And no, this is absolutely Mariko's purpose, to do this in public, to once again put Ishido back on his heels. Toranaga once again kind of outsmarting Ishido and having him react to the whole situation. Because remember in the opening episode, it was Toranaga who essentially was holding Lady Ochiba and the heir, quote unquote, hostage, and was doing a much better job of it than Ishido clearly has done here with Mariko. Mariko's really pushing out, and the back and forth about the poetry and her delivering that line about the snow and about the leafless branch there, I thought was really powerful as well. Maybe a bit of foreshadowing after you watch the movie about the leafless branch in the shadows, so in the snow rather. So all of it is kind of leading to where we were going with this with Mariko here.
I just had this image of, wouldn't it be interesting if we expected our leaders to also be masters of calligraphy and poetry and know drama and art? And because, there's something so awesome about how I'm going to conduct my politics through the use of a beautifully worded haiku.
Yeah.
Well, I also know this is just with the samurai thing of I personally, having done a lot of martial arts, there is weird connections to being forced to the discipline of poetry actually connects to other stuff. And I kind of wish some of our leaders had to do some of those things too, I guess.
Well, they used to in the old days. And I'm sure there were quite a lot of conversations during the Cold War between Russian and American leaders, or Soviet leaders and American leaders, who they said certain things in order to imply other things, but you got the message, so to speak. So yeah, I appreciated that as well. All right, let's move forward with Mariko. She moves out of this scene, and she's confronted by her son, who says that what she's doing is embarrassing their name. She said, and he says, if you do this and go through with this, you are going to I'm going to not want to be your son. And he says it in Japanese, which I think is really powerful. Yabushige is upset because once again, he is not involved in Toranaga's plans, and he hates that he can't be involved in Toranaga's plans. And Blackthorne, it says, they're going to kill you. You cannot do this. and he kind of hints that he might know what she's up to when he says, wow, you would walk through a blade just to prove that it's sharp. So there's some really strong moments here leading us to this scene, this other scene with Ochiba and Mariko with Blackthorn. But I want to hit these three scenes first. Steve, your thoughts on this? Your thoughts on Yabushige's frustration, Blackthorn's pained feeling of what might be happening here, and also her son's defiance towards her.
So the scene with the son, as far as I remember, is not in the book, and I think it's a great addition. I really liked it. It for two reasons. One is it just shows the level of pain and sacrifice that Mariko has to do to fulfill her duty. That's the first thing. But it also hints at the politics, because her son is a Christian, one of the Christian lords, is trying to maneuver to get Mariko to change her plan by an alliance with his family. Powerful family. So I think that's really great in terms of advancing the story. The Yabushige yelling at her, it's like word for word what's in the book. And I just love it because it's so great to see, like, she is so far in front of him. And he cannot, because we can see this is all part of a plan. And this is, and Yabushige's like, what the hell's going on, you dumb woman? It's great. The stuff with Blackthorn, and we'll talk. I guess we'll address it more as we get to all the Blackthorn stuff. But just this is where them not really having much of a relationship and him not really having learned much about Japan makes this so much weaker. Because there's just not much. He's just, why are you doing this? This seems stupid. Right. Don't do this. Is not as much of a scene as what is in the book, which I guess we'll come back to in a moment.
Yeah, I mean, I love the scene with the son because it felt very topical and universal. The 14-year-old kid upset that his mom is embarrassing him. Stop it, mom! You're embarrassing everybody. And guess what? I'm betrothed. I'm going to be betrothed to Kiyama's granddaughter, so I'm going to shed this name. And her defiance, her connection to Toranaga is so strong that she says, you're going to marry who Toranaga tells you to marry. And he said, well, if you go through with this, I'm not even going to be your son anymore. So really powerful scene there, I thought, as well. And Yabushige is fun, and Blackthorn we'll touch on a little bit. So now we end up in the scene here, Steve, where she defiantly walks out with Toranaga's ladies there and Toranaga's new son, and confronts her retinue confronts Ishido's men, and it ends up essentially into an all-out battle where just about everybody on her retinue side dies. She pulls out her weapon and fights off these guys as much as possible. And all of this is happening as the lords are watching, as Lady Ochiba, who had been watching under disguise, eventually comes out from under disguise to watch it, with Yabushige there, with Blackthorn there as well. I imagine her son is there as well. I only saw it once. I don't remember if he was there. But like, everybody is watching this happen. So not only was she defiant there to Ishido and Ichiba in the meeting with everybody there in front, it's basically forcing Ishido's hand. Now she is really forcing Ishido's hands and exposing this whole situation to everybody. So your thoughts on this scene and how it all went down, and when it ends up with her just sitting there at the end saying, I'm going to commit seppuku because you will not let me follow my Lord's orders. And I ask Lord Kiyama, who says yes, to be my second because he's a Christian and he understands the situation that I'm in, and taking my life and what it means for me as a Christian and also as a samurai. So, Steve, your thoughts on this entire sequence, which I thought was just stellar, man.
So one of the things that's come up many times on the Cine-Files, is comparing a book to a movie, and sometimes we go, oh, well, the book is way better than the movie. And then sometimes, like in the case of Jaws, I go, the movie is way better than the book. And every once in a while, there's one where we go, you know what? The book is great. The movie is great. And this scene is a perfect example. They're not the same. But they're both great, and I will tell you what happens in the book, and also talk about what they ended up doing in the movie. So in the book, same thing. They all come out. I love the way it's staged in the film, and Mariko's her pride
in the show,
her pride, her stance, and the moment of her saying, kill him is fantastic. What happens that's slightly different in the book is that the captain of the guard goes up to the gray captain of the guard, and they bow very formally and say, I'm so-and-so, I'm so-and-so, and they have a duel to the death. And the brown guy wins, and we go through every single, like they have 20 grays, and when all of them are dead, After one-on-one duels, for the most part, they walk forward to the next gate where there are another 20 grays, and they repeat the process. And they keep repeating the process until the number of browns gets dwindled more and more. And then at a certain point, the grays start to cheat by hitting them with arrows. And now we have an all-out melee, kill another set of 20 grays, and it's always 20s, like always even numbers. Right. And then the next group comes up, and it's just Mariko. And so she draws the last sword of the last dead guard and has a duel, and Yabushige and Blackthorne are watching, and Yabushige is like, if she hadn't gotten an absolute badass that she had to fight, she probably would have killed him. She's that good. Wow. Unfortunately, just by the luck of the draw, she got a top swordsman.
Yeah.
And the way the fight is described is like, he is being absolutely perfectly polite in the way that he is fighting her, because he doesn't want to embarrass her. And she at a certain point going full on realizes, I can never get to this guy. And then she says what she says, which is, I can't live with this shame. I'm going to go kill myself.
Right.
And that's great. It is a great sequence in the book. And I totally understand why they didn't do it, because it would take a huge amount of time.
Yes.
And it wouldn't focus. So what they did was they go, okay, how do we do this in a more compact way, but still show emotionally all the same stuff?
Yeah.
And I love you get the first moment where her captain goes out and does kill those two guys on his own, and then you get the betrayal of the arrows, and then you get the all-out fight, and then you get her picking up that naginata. And it's so great because they managed to go, she is good.
Yeah.
This is hopeless.
Right. Yes.
And you even see what I would say is their translation of the politeness. They don't kill her.
No.
They're like, we're going to defend ourselves and stop her. And even the moment of firing those arrows, all those arrows are saying, we can kill you at any point. But we're not doing that. Yeah.
Those arrows got me, man. Because I jumped the first two arrows because I was like, wait, what? Like, are they really putting her in danger? Like, what is happening here? And then when she pulled out the naginata, as you said, and fought them off, you're right. They were polite because they would put 4 up to stop her. Every angle until eventually she spun around down on the ground, and you could tell, and which is what the whole point of this was, right? Was to basically show, I am a prisoner here. I am hostage here. And Lord Ishido's men are absolutely keeping me here, as they've killed almost my entire retinue and then left it to the point where I had to fight for myself. I essentially, I don't know, crossing the line of what you expect with a ritual or a polite moment like this. I was left to fight for myself. That's how bad this is. And her calling on Lord Kiyama to be her second, I thought was really powerful, even though that fool doesn't show up. It still was a powerful moment that, once again, is pushing this narrative. And, the word's going to travel that, oh, she's being held against her will. All the high families, all the rich families are going to hear this story and make their decision about this guy. Because, like you said, Steve, at the end of the day, Ishido is a peasant. So is that going to affect the high family and how families and how they view this situation and what he did to a daughter of one of the high families, regardless if that daughter of that family's name is in shame because of what happened? So fascinating stuff here. Again, the political machinations bubbling under the surface, I think, are so essential to this show being successful, and that you grasp at a subconscious level and a conscious level, depending on the situation, and it helps you to enjoy the show even more, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's one, if I may add one more thing. One of the other things I love about this, and it's described this way, I would say, in the book a fair amount, but is that what I think is so important about this is, in its own way, despite its brutality, this was a ritual.
Yeah.
This was performed in a ritualistic way.
100%.
And I think this is critical to the show, is that the way the book frames things, and we've seen this multiple times in the show with the tea ceremony, with the way people bow, with the way people move, with the way people speak, is that the way this era of Japan is framed is that everything is ritualized.
Yes.
Everything is about performing your role within the ritual in a beautiful and perfect manner. And the rigidity of the ritual is, results in all these deaths, but all the deaths doesn't detract from the beauty of the ritual. And I think, in its weird, violent way, this is a beautiful sequence that we just watched, Yeah.
And I think let's move on to the next scene here that happens with Ochiba calling for Blackthorne to have an audience with the heir. And when this situation happens, Mariko shows up to quote unquote translate, but Mariko sees through it very quickly and realizes that it's Ochiba who wants to talk to her and not the heir who wants to have a conversation with Blackthorne. And this is a really fantastic back and forth between them as they reconnect and kind of use Blackthorn a little bit for this scene as a, I don't know, as a go between for their conversation or as an excuse rather for their conversation about their past, and her Ochiba essentially implying that she does not want her to take her life. But we as viewers are watching two women in a patriarchal society who are survivors in two different ways with the situations they were handed in their lives. Ochiba is obsessed with staying alive. Mariko is obsessed with retaining her honor even in death. And she even says it at the end, you know, life and death, or says, I think to Blackthorn, life and death are the same. It's how you approach it and what you do with it that matters. And of course, Blackthorn says, well, one's permanent, but because he is in a Western point of view. But this fits the back and forth with her and Ochiba. I think is a really powerful scene, man. What did you think of the scene? Is it the same in the book or different?
Not in the book at all.
Oh,
in the book. Well, this is the thing. I don't. When we first brought up Ochiba, I said she's a great character. She's really interesting. I'm sensing there's going to be a lot more of her in the show than there was in the book, and it's not.
You're
I mean,
right.
she's certainly in the book and throughout the whole sequence, she's there. But this relation, in particular, the relationship with Mariko and Ochiba, they've built up far more here. So none of this is in the book. I love everything that goes between them. And this is the thing, and this is one of those life things. You have that old friend, old frenemy that that you have many miles or many years of water under the bridge with them, and you each have your narrative about what happened. And of course, because Mariko's our hero and she's the person we side with, I believe her narrative a lot more. But like you could see all the pain that's there and all the connection that's there and how they framed who the other person is. I think the scene is fantastic.
Yeah, and ending with Blackthorn saying when they get alone there that you like we said, that life and death back and forth conversation, but him saying, would you consider living for me? And one of the biggest complaints we've had, Steve, that's come on over the last few weeks, and some people have been upset with our feelings about it. Some people have agreed with us, in the comment section. We had almost 10,000, over 10,000 views on last week's review. A lot of people had strong feelings about our feelings on the Blackthorn Mariko situation, but here is finally a moment where you have Blackthorn express legitimate feelings for her as much as he possibly can. Not overtly, I love you, whatever, but saying live for him is essentially him saying, please, will you think about our connection, our love, our relationship? There's a possibility, there's a future we can have together if you don't do this. And I thought that was a really powerful button on the scene overall. What did you feel about it? Do you think it kind of alleviates some of our concerns, or was it a little too late?
Here's my big problem, and now we got to start talking about this stuff, which is that, and the biggest issue for me is how good is Blackthorn's Japanese, because there's moments in this where he speaks some words, and then we has the stock phrase with Ochiba as a thing from the book of like, please use simple words, but throughout this whole thing, throughout this whole episodes, there are moments, particularly with Yabushige, where it seems like Blackthorn doesn't know what the hell is going on. And then you have him insulting towards Kiyama, which I'm sure we'll get to in a moment, and then you have him in that audience chamber where there's this huge confrontation, and I don't know how much Blackthorn understands of what is happening. Does he understand 5% or does he understand 95%? And we don't know. Mostly he looks somewhat bewildered. Then we have this intense scene where he's brought in essentially as the excuse so that Mariko could talk to Ochiba, and he stands there, and then they have this intense conversation, including the single tear from Ochiba. She turns away and all of this emotion. Then Mariko turns to Blackthorn and says, okay, time to go. And we have a shot of Mariko, and he's out of focus in the background, kind of loping away like an idiot.
Absolutely.
And that proves to me that he has no fucking idea what has happened in this scene. And that's why. So now we get to the, hey, would you consider doing not leaving me, doing the staying around for me, don't die because of me. And I'm like, why? You're a moron. Like, you don't have any idea what's going on at all. And so no, it made that whole moment worse for me. Because they don't have a relationship. They're telling me that they have a relationship, but they really, and it's not even just that they don't have a relationship. It's that he's not good enough for her. he's just not good enough for Mariko as established in this show. He's kind of an idiot. And, like we had to go back to like episode 3 when he's conning the galley out of the harbor to go, dude, that guy's cool.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen him in 6 episodes. We've just seen this
cool like that.
Yeah, we just seen this kind of spoiled, not interested guy, and who probably slept with her when she pretended to be the maid. And since then they fought, and now the implication that they're trying to tell us is that this is somehow deep, true love. Yeah. But I have not seen that, and I don't like him that much at this point. And so at that moment for me is very frustrating.
All right, fair point. I think I totally see it that way. I think what they're depending on is the chemistry between Cosmo Jarvis and ANNA SAWAI, which I think is there, regardless if there's enough scenes to really reinforce the relationship between them. It is still there, so you understand that they believe what they're doing. They've invested in the relationship. But I agree with you. The show hasn't done enough, and I've been agreeing with you last 3 weeks now, to flesh out this relationship. And there's more to explore here that would have made these moments more powerful, and even more so when we get to the ending, which we'll talk about here in just a second. So all right, so nature of the betrayal. Oh yeah, so we'll do the Yabushige stuff later. Okay, so she does some final confession here. Then we go through the ceremony of seppuku. Basically, everybody is there except for Kiyama, who doesn't let us know why he's not there, but I imagine we'll find out in a little bit. But Blackthorne steps up to fill in the number 2, which I thought was a really powerful moment there. Once again, trying to reinforce the love and the relationship they have together. She tells him, wait till I fall on over. You've never done this. Don't be rushing to cut my head off. Just wait a second. But Ishido arrives. As the doors close, we see that it's about to happen. But then Ishido arrives, the doors open, and he throws the permits on the ground, which causes all the other ladies who had come over, we had seen earlier in the episode, to be part of this crew of ladies who are trying to get the hell out of there. They ask for their free passage, and Ishido says, you guys are all free to go. You just got to apply for the permits. It's fine. And so it's very close. So for me, I'm like, okay, we're good. Nothing's going to happen. Then Mariko and Blackthorne spend the night together, finally consummating this relationship. Steve, I didn't see it coming, even after these two finally had sex for real and honestly, as the show portrayed it here. And then we have what Yabushige did, which we'll talk a little bit later about. Yabushige essentially selling them out. These shinobi, which are essentially ninjas, show up, come through, cut and kill a bunch of people, end up fighting Blackthorne and Mariko. They fight their way out with Yabushige playing both sides of this, end up back in this this house off of the main house here. They barricade the doors, but then the shinobi set up what they hear the shinobi setting up bombs outside, and everyone's pulling back. And then Mariko steps forward, almost like a crucifixion. We're doing Last Temptation of Christ right now in the Cine-Files. It's essentially what I thought as she spread her arms out and spread her white robe out, and boom, the explosion to end the episode. So take me from the seppuku to the betrayal to the explosion, my friend. What did you think of this stuff?
Well, John, I want to tell you what I thought, but before I do that,
are we taking a break? Wait, did I?
There is something that I have been not talking about for 5 or 6 episodes.
The big thing.
Yes. And I now must tell you the big thing because it directly relates to this scene.
Okay.
Which is, here's what it is. When we arrived in the village, which I think is on Jiro with Yabu and Omi, and Toranaga goes away, this is the very first thing that happens, which is that Yabushige says to Blackthorne, because it's really important that he learn Japanese.
Yeah.
You have to learn Japanese in a super short space of time, like 6 weeks or 2 months or something like that. Yeah. And if you don't speak fluent Japanese by then, I'm going to kill every person in this village, man, woman, and child, and burn the village to the ground.
Oh my God.
And Blackthorne goes, holy shit, and spends a couple of days really, really trying to learn Japanese. And he tells basically everybody, if I say anything wrong, correct me. And they're like, well, we can't have like a peasant correct. He's like, anybody, I say anything wrong, they have to correct me. And so this is one of the people that corrects him is the gardener who ends up dying. And that's part of their relationship, is that the gardener is helping him to learn Japanese. But after a couple of days, he's like, there's no way that I can learn this, and I can't have all these lives on my shoulders. Yeah. It's wrong. And he's in some conversation with Mariko he's having about, she's basically says, look, you're in Japan. You have to be Japanese now. Like you can't think like a European anymore. You have to start thinking like a Japanese. He thinks about things. It has like a hard night of the soul. And then they go to have a meeting with Omi and Yabu, and Mariko is there. And he says, please translate this for me. He says, I cannot live with the shame of this village on my life. It is against my beliefs. And the only thing I can do is kill myself. And they go, Yabu and Omi are going, bullshit. He's not Japanese. He's not going to do it. I don't know if he is going to do it. We can't let him. And they're debating because they know he's important to Toranaga, and they could stop him right now. They could put him in irons. They could lock him up. They could let him go for it. And Omi says to Yabushige, he's like, look, if you let him get away with this, then he's just going to pull this out every time. And so they say, okay, Anjin-san, go ahead and kill yourself. So he gets the knife and he puts it at his belly, and he says his last prayer, has his last moment, and then goes, okay, I guess I have to kill myself. And he drives the knife into his belly, which Omi catches the blade, cutting the crap out of his hand at the last possible second. And he only gets a little scratch on his belly, and he doesn't die. So first of all, Blackthorne was committing seppuku. He was killing himself.
Right.
Then he's in a complete daze after this and totally fragile. And they have to, he doesn't have the strength to stand. They have to basically carry him out. He's in this complete otherworldly state. And suddenly we go through this whole moment of like, he hears every drop of rain on the ground. He feels the earth. He feels the sunshine. He can't speak for like a day. And Mariko says, this is your new life. You've been born into a new world. And this is the critical transition of his character to accepting what it is to be Japanese. And what they finally decide about the Japanese is like, we're not going to change anything except for the fact that however much Japanese you learn in the next 2 months, we will consider enough. Wow. And Blackthorne promises for this, because of this gesture, that he's going to do everything he can to learn everything about Japan and to learn Japanese, which is why by the point that he meets his crewmen, he's so different at that point. And so in this moment now, at this moment of Mariko making the decision to commit seppuku, he's an entirely different person. His Japanese is very good. He can he's not perfect at all, but he can understand everything that's going on. He totally understands the politics of the situation. He himself is a person that decided to kill himself rather than deal with a certain kind of shame. And so that is the Blackthorne that ends up at this seppuku. That is entirely different.
All right. But like, let's deal with this. What do you think of this?
Okay. So if you understand why the whole time I was going, there's a big thing.
There was a big thing, and clearly they decided not to do the big thing, and your sneaking suspicion week to week that it was not going to happen. Yeah. That makes all the sense in the world in retrospect, because you saw how they were handling the Blackthorne character, and you said, there's no way they can make this big thing work. The farther and farther away they move Blackthorne from being an essential part of what is happening with Toranaga's plans and being involved in Toranaga's plans as a counselor, the less important it becomes that it's going to happen. So, or the less likely possibility that it's going to happen. And clearly it didn't. So yeah, interesting.
So, and so in my feelings about this scene, I think he's done really well.
Yeah, these three.
Yeah, Kiyama is there in the book. So he does. Okay. He's there ready to second her. So the whole thing of Blackthorne offering to second her doesn't happen. I am so 100% mixed about that offer, because on the one hand, it's beautiful. And I love the respect it shows to her, the respect it shows to the tradition. That we just saw Buntaro have to kill his own father,
right?
And so the idea of having to kill the person that you love, and I love his line where he says, basically, I've already done enough things that are going to send me to hell. What's one more? I love that moment. But the other thing that's in my head is the story of 12-year-old Toranaga who took 9 hacks to get through the neck.
Right.
I'm like, Blackthorne's not good with a sword. He can't cut her head off. He's never going to make that. That's a really hard thing to do. Yeah. But I thought that scene was handled really, really well. And I was thinking of you the whole time, because I'm like, John doesn't know whether or not she's going to kill herself.
Yeah.
John doesn't know this is, and I'm assuming, I was pretty sure that it would get called off in exactly the way it is in the book, which is what happens. And so I think it's beautifully and powerfully done. And it is a great and terrible misdirect for what's about to happen after.
Yeah, let's take a quick break, because I want to talk about that moment. And then, of course, we'll talk Yabushige and Blackthorne to wrap up our conversation here on this episode. But let's take a quick break so I can put in a commercial on the podcast. And then we'll be right back right after this. All right, Steve, let's get into this moment, this final moment, the explosion, the supposed death of Mariko, because we have not seen a body yet, but is this what happens in the book? I don't remember this from the series, and I did not read the book, and I was shocked, absolutely shocked. I mean, I think I just went like this for 30 seconds after the episode was over, because I just kept thinking they would keep her alive and she would marry Blackthorne, and that would be season 2 of this fucking show. But instead they kill her off, and we've already seen them deviate from the books and a number of deaths in the last few weeks. Is this in the book? Is this not in the book? What happens here?
It's almost exactly what's in the book. Wow. It's almost exactly what's in the book. And I do want to add one other thing, which is because of the thing that didn't happen, the aftermath of, because what happens after Mariko doesn't kill herself is exactly what happened to Blackthorne after his stopped seppuku. They both have the exact same experience. She doesn't have the strength to stand. He's the one who has to help her. There's all these parallels that happen, and that this is her rebirth into her new life, and that Blackthorne is the only human around who understands what it feels like to be at that close to death and come back. And so part of it, when they in this version where they obviously have sex, I was like, okay, seems a little weird. I mean, everybody's all around you guys, and I haven't felt great about your relationship. But in the book version, it 100% is like, it's way beyond sex. It's like they are so deeply connected, you can't imagine. It very much Yabushige going around, letting people in, creating all sorts of chaos. I love the way that he kills that first guard. There's a great jump cut, and it's super shocking. And then just the brutality of everything that happens. And I would say, you described it absolutely perfectly, is her going into that arms outstretched crucifixion position in front of that door as she makes her final statement. That's one of the great deaths. I mean, it really, it
does happen in the book. She dies in the book.
Yeah.
Damn, man.
Which I guess is sort of a spoiler, because the people watching don't know. In episode 10, you come back to life, she could be okay. So I guess I did just spoil. Yes, in the book, she definitely dies.
Yeah. Oh my God. Damn. All right. Well, that blows me away, because I didn't know. But who knows? I mean, but who knows? Listen, we may be saying a spoiler, but like, as the show has shown us, she may have lived. We may see her live in the next episode. We don't know if she's barely alive or whatever. Who knows? Because like, they killed off Toranaga's son. That's not in the book. What's it? Haramatsu, his second in command, him killing him, Hiromatsu, that's not in the book. So they've deviated from the book. So we may have spoiled something. We may not have spoiled something. So all of you calm down if you're upset about that. We don't know what's going to happen with Mariko in the next episode, if she lives or if she dies. But I imagine they ended it that way so that you got the effect of her dying. I don't think this is like a Glenn switcheroo in Walking Dead. Like, it's legitimately her death. So, but okay, well then I'm shocked. I'm absolutely shocked, and I did not see it coming, because again, in my mind, I thought they ended up together. As I've been watching these fucking videos, I'm so caught up in thinking about the real story that I thought the same thing was going to happen here. So what a shocking ending to this episode.
Well, I think the mistake you made was thinking that the wife was Mariko.
Right. Yes. 100%. Yes. That's what I thought.
That is, I'm not saying that Blackthorne doesn't have kids and do all sorts of other things.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's not with Mariko.
Fair point. Fair point. All right. Well, I thought the moment was so well done, and we don't want to belabor it, but it was an incredible ending to this episode. So let's go backwards and let's move over to Yabushige stuff and his storyline as we see him on the boat, he's essentially gonna use Blackthorne. Here's Blackthorne being a pawn yet again in another situation here, marches him into that meeting with Ishido and with Lady Ochiba. But before that, Blackthorne has this back and forth with Kiyama about being how deep he is in a trade, loving trade and all of that. But Yabushige tries to pitch Ishido hey, I brought you a gift. I brought you this guy. He's going to be a great sea captain. Ishido tears him apart about his quote unquote betrayals, and then says, I don't accept this thing at all. And so Yabushige is kind of behind the 8 ball throughout most of the rest of the episode. As we said, gets mad at Mariko for what she does, feeling behind everything, then gets met by a soldier there his second in command rather, who tells him, hey, listen, Ishido is in on this. You just have to do one thing. And I knew right in that moment, it basically meant you're going to have to betray Blackthorne and Mariko. And then when he does it, and as you said, kills some of those guards and all of that, and then plays both sides as he's being led into this armory place instead of going out the front gate like he was trying to push them to go out the front gate. He is essentially now stuck in this situation yet again. Yabushige trying to play both sides and get stuck on one side against the side he is trying to play for, and that's Yoshido. So what do you think about how they handled Yabushige throughout this episode and his storylines and his scenes here throughout the episode?
So first of all, I finally put my finger on what it is I love about Yabushige and Tadanobu Asano, who's the actor.
Yeah.
Is that here's the thing, and I know that you'll understand this as an actor, and I'm sure you've done this many times. It's like the thing that's so great about him, in every scene, that actor has a secret.
Yes. 100%. 100%.
You could always see he's thinking about something else, and we don't know what it is, but there's always stuff going on, and that's super exciting. That being said, I don't think a lot of this makes a lot of sense to me. Like, I just kind of going like, okay, what? And part of it is, again, because Blackthorne hasn't been as valued.
Yeah.
There's not, what is he offering Ishido? All he seems to be offering is like, hey, this guy's a really good captain.
Yeah.
Because the cannon, he's kind of implying we've already brought the cannon, or I can give you the cannon.
Yeah.
You don't need Blackthorne for the cannon. It's like there are a bunch of Portuguese and other sailors and other captains. It's not like there are other people. This whole offer that Yabushige is making just doesn't seem, if I was Ishido, I'd turn it down too. Like, I don't understand. I really don't understand his plan that much at this point. That being said, all the pieces you described, in particular, the moment where it's like you're going to have to betray them, and then everything he does throughout the betrayal, I think works really, really well.
Yeah, but I think this is what Toranaga's plan was. He knew Yabushige was going to do this bullshit. He knew him, and like I said in the last episode, he knew these guys. I can't remember the term he used, but he knew these guys were going to throw themselves out of the situation and make their own plans. And so he knew Yabushige was going to do this. And I guess he was okay with it because it essentially provided a distraction for Ishido no Chiba, to Ishido no Chiba for Mariko and what she was going to do. And so I thought it was a good balance throughout the episode. You're 100% right. I mean, the actor does such a great job because even when he plays, like when he does when he does all that kind of stuff, there's more. There's more. He's always got a smile or some kind of hidden smile, but he also has a fear when he's betraying. Like in that sequence when the shinobi come in, you see him almost getting killed by the shinobi, but then standing there is that my man like counts down and what he's doing there on his shoulder, but he is like a little scared in the situation as well. So even though he likes to play both sides, he's never really 100% comfortable no matter what he's doing. And so that comes through amidst the charm. There's also this real feeling that he could die at any moment, and he knows it. And so this is a fascinating character to watch throughout this episode as well. All right. Well, are there any other things that we missed that you want to make sure we hit, Steve? Any other scenes or storylines or moments within this episode that were powerful to you and stood out?
One other thing is the sort of final confession with Alvido, I think, is a beautiful scene.
Oh, yes.
A really, really beautiful scene. And the only thing, and this is just, again, it goes back to, and I'm sure everyone in the comments, if you might want me to shut up about this, and at this point I probably will, but like her line of we should learn how to drink cha from an empty cup, that's a line between her and Blackthorne in the book. And it happens over and over again. And it is part of Blackthorne's training in becoming more Japanese, because this is like a Zen riddle. How do you drink cha from an empty cup? Yeah. And this is a thing in Blackthorne's journey to become more and more Japanese and understand this perspective. This is the thing he is struggling to do. Yeah. And this is the last thing that she tells him, I think, before the seppuku. He says, no, why can't we this is terrible. You can do this. She says, you're going to have to learn to drink cha from an empty cup. And drinking cha from an empty cup means living in the world without me, Wow. And that's a much more profound meaning than her using that with Father Alvido.
Yeah. Good point. Even though they touched upon that at the beginning of the episode, they haven't really, that's another thing. They haven't really fleshed out the story between her and the Father Vito over the last few weeks either. There's just been occasional scenes, like we saw the scene in this episode where the ship's captain there calls Alvido and says, "Oh, your girlfriend is here, the translator," So there's this implication that there's a very long relationship between them, but we as viewers haven't really had enough of that relationship between them, other than occasional quiet moments, occasional scenes between them, to really flesh out the depth of that scene, so that we could get why the forgiveness scene is supposed to resonate with us. So yeah, I would agree with you, Steve. It didn't do enough to really hammer that home so that we could feel that as powerfully. But again, it's not because of the actors. The actors are
great.
Yeah, I agree.
And by the way, now because you did that voice, I want to cast you as a Portuguese or captain at some point. I think this.
I'll do that. Your girlfriend. But I do want to say one last thing. The scene between Yabushige and Blackthorne, which is a bit of a throwaway scene, when Yabushige does not want Mariko to translate for him and speaks total Japanese to see how much Blackthorne understands, and then Blackthorne coming back at him English, and then Yabushige trying to play like he understands what he's saying. This is a great scene, and I think this is going to bear fruit in the finale. This idea of who understands who better in the language they're natively speaking to each other. So I wonder if that's going to pay dividends in the finale. But Steve, you've read the book, so I don't know if I can ask you any predictions for what you think is going to happen in the season finale, because I imagine you know. So
well, here's
show predictions maybe from what we've been given.
Well, here's the thing that I've been thinking about.
Yeah.
That when we started, this was obviously a miniseries, and it was going to end just like the original miniseries did, and just like the book did.
Yeah.
But people have been talking about season 1 and season 1 and season 1, and I've been going at the beginning like, well, that's not what this is, because there's just a book and it ends where it ends. And now I'm kind of going, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah,
because I do know exactly where the book ends.
Okay,
and there could totally be a season 2. That starts where the book ends. There absolutely could be a season 2. I mean, it's not like after 1600, the history of Japan became boring and nothing happened. There was a bunch of stuff that happened.
Good point.
This is this era in Japan. It's like, we always go back to stories of the Old West or back to stories of the Revolution. There's certain eras in American history that we return to over and over again. From like 1580 until about 1620. There is including like the Seven Samurai takes place around this era,
Oh yeah, right.
Yojimbo's more 1800s, but like a lot of the stories are from this era, and so there's a lot that could happen. So that's my only thought. Maybe a season 2 will happen.
I think you make an excellent point, Steve, because remember in the real life story, Blackthorne becomes a counselor for Toranaga. Toranaga wins this thing at the end, and Blackthorne's character, the real life counterpart, becomes a counselor for this real life counterpart of Toranaga. So there are stories to be told as those two men venture forward here in the running of Japan, and probably other people trying to stop it from happening, trying to undercut them, other intrigue, other stuff that could happen here. So certainly a season 2 is possible, considering the response, which has been so massive to this show. Seeing Anna Sawai on numerous talk shows this week, now it makes sense because they were fucking killing her. So you clearly see that they have an idea for where they're going with this that could stretch out into multiple seasons, which could be interesting to see for sure overall. So yeah, my only prediction is we're going to have a hell of a finale. That's going to be a blast, because every one of these 9 episodes has been very enjoyable for me. And so I'm looking forward to this finale, absolutely blowing my socks off. So I can't wait to see it. All right, well, there's our spoiler. That's our spoiler review here for episode 9, Crimson Sky, here on the Outlaw Nation. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us. Sorry about that. Hanging out with us today for this particular spoiler review. If you're listening to it, we do have this. If you want to listen to it again and you don't want to watch our pretty faces, you can also listen to it on the Cine-Files podcast network. That's where we put these reviews. So if you want to go and catch up on all the reviews we've done and just hear them in your ears, you can do that there. Steve, another fun review with you, man. Thanks so much for taking that time. I know you're always busy, brother, with a million things along with our show. So I really appreciate you hanging out and doing these reviews with us every week. Please let people know where they can follow you and where they can hang out with us on the Cine-Files.
So first of all, this has been a blast. It's been really fun revisiting this world. It's obviously one that has deep special meaning to me. And you can find me at SR Morris on Twitter, SR Morris1 on Instagram, the Cine-Files podcast, and it's CINE-FILES, in case you didn't know about our unusual spelling. And John, do you mind if I tell them not only what we're doing right now, but a couple of things coming up? Because I think they're pretty exciting.
Get your way, my friend.
We've been doing our season of Scorsese. That's been several months now of very deep dives into Goodfellas, Raging Bull, and we're just finishing up Last Temptation of Christ. Then we have a live show. We do shows just like this coming up next week, and this one is going to be on baseball movies. And I've said many times, and I think you might agree, that baseball is the most cinematic sport. We really get the best movies out of baseball, boxing being the other one that's really great. So we're going to do a whole show about baseball movies. And then as we've been doing at the 10th anniversary of some of the great Marvel movies. We're digging into Marvel movies, and we are right now at this very moment at the 10th anniversary of one of the greatest Marvel movies of all time, and that is Captain America, the Winter Soldier. And so we are starting our deep dive of Captain America, the Winter Soldier in a couple of weeks, which I'm really excited for.
Absolutely. So come and subscribe to the Cine-Files wherever you download podcasts. Trust me, we go scene by scene through every movie we discuss. So you'll get a thorough discussion of these classic, great, and sometimes guilty pleasure films that we do on the Cine-Files. Don't miss out on that. Go and check it out. Thank you again, Steve. And as for me, you can follow me at The Rocha Says on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, The Outlaw Nation on Twitch. Please subscribe to the channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell button so you see we're dropping all the content we do here on the Outlaw Nation channel. And head on over. Oh, yeah. And that's everything. That's everything. Come back and join us next week as we go into the season 1 finale here for Shogun, and hopefully have ourselves a fantastic time saying goodbye to the world, but also enjoying one last trip into the world here on the Outlaw Nation. Take care. Until then, peace.